Very much. Brilliant. Okay, well, welcome to everyone here in the room and then anyone watching the presentation afterwards. I'm really excited to be giving this presentation today. I was just saying it's a topic I'm really passionate about, and it's all about how anyone can be a leader. So we might all kind of typically associate being a leader with more senior positions, certain levels of authority, maybe our managers or something like that. But the reality is that any of us can use the skills of leadership and lead those around us and lead ourselves. So today is going to be all about explaining the why is this important, and then giving you the practical tools to actually do this yourselves in your day-to-day life, in volunteering, even in your work. I think these are all skills that are really transferable, and whatever situation you're in, they will enhance and improve the experience that you have in all of those. So, before we get started, for the people that are here, I'd love to hear if you think of the word leadership, what are the skills, the positive skills that you would associate with a good leader? Are they listening skills? Are they motivational skills? If you could pop them in the chat, I just want to gauge, yeah, what your perspective on leadership is. And maybe I'll put mine in as well. Communication. Nice one, Charlotte. I completely agree. And we will be talking about this. Brilliant. Very important. Um, I think I'm gonna put appreciation. Oh, Andrea's right on it. Active listening, communication, and understanding. Absolutely loving these answers. This is completely in line with what I'm going to be talking about. Oh, modern art. Yeah, completely agree. Empathy and motivation. That's really interesting that you've all said these sorts of things because they are so in line with um, the qualities of leadership that are important that we can all use. I mean, everything you guys have all listed, communication, active listening, empathy, we as individuals can use them no matter who we're around, no matter what level we are in an organization, no matter what we're doing with volunteering. All these things are things we can embed. And that is what I'm going to talk about more. So, Charlotte, if you could just slide on into the next one. So, first of all, let's briefly chat about why leadership matters. So, arguably most importantly, as I've already insinuated, anyone can be a leader. It's not just about your title, it's actually about the way you influence and interact with other people. And research has literally been done on this. There's a whole branch of research about leadership and how it's not maybe those kind of, I guess, maybe more traditional and slightly archaic views about what leadership was. Once upon a time, it probably was a bit more directive than people telling others what to do. But, in 2025, that is no longer the case. The second is that everyone has the potential to be a leader. Again, you don't need that official title to be practicing all these things that I'm going to talk about that you've already mentioned. And, quite frankly, by practicing these skills in different settings, you are going to be furthering your own development in various ways. So there's really no downside to be, utilizing and practicing these skills in different settings. And again, arguably, leadership and skills can enhance every interaction that you have. Called it the foundation of enjoyment. But I do think, given that the skills that you practice are going to have a positive influence on those you're around, on yourself, it really does boost your experiences of, whatever it is that you are doing, that you're using those skills within. Perfect. Next slide, please. So, what are actually practical benefits as well of practicing leadership skills? So, as I've already mentioned, you're developing new skills potentially. You're adding to your, repertoire, your portfolio, and what's the downside in that? I think volunteering as well presents a really safe space to be doing this because, again, the word leadership I think carries a bit of baggage. It can seem quite intimidating, but today and the kind of breakdown of exactly what can be called leadership skills will hopefully, make you see that these things aren't so intimidating to try, and volunteering presents a really good opportunity to actually do that. And then a big one is problem solving, right? So problem solving is a huge aspect of leadership. And it's a skill that when practiced can, benefit you in any role. Um, yeah, particularly in volunteering as well. I must say, when resources are a bit limited, the third sector is quite unique in that there are constraints that are very different to the private sector. It allows you the chance to, practice a different type of problem solving. And I think the more you can problem solve with more difficult constraints, the better you will be when you don't have those. So, it's a really important one. And most importantly, I would argue, is the ability or the practicality of building diverse relationships. So, every single job that we will ever be in means that we have to interact with people. There's pretty much not a day that goes by, I would hope, that you can't interact with other human beings. So, that ability to build diverse relationships in these, different settings, again, will just be such a bonus and um yeah, a good thing about practicing leadership. Brilliant. So now the how do we do this? What does this actually look like in reality? So, the first element of leadership that I want to go into is how you lead yourself, which sounds a bit odd because, again, obviously, the word leadership is typically associated with maybe leading a group of others, other people. But actually, I would argue that if you can't lead yourself, if you don't kind of know yourself enough, you aren't able to motivate and do all these things involved in leadership, then it will be quite hard to transfer those skills over to another group of people. And there's that classic phrase, practice what you preach. And people, we're social animals. We pick up on other people's behavior. And so I do think, again, like a really important aspect of leadership is demonstrating the skills that you would hope others adopt as well. So the first kind of element in this wheel is self-awareness. So it's a key part of emotional intelligence, and as a result, having self-awareness, understanding what your values are, what your motivations are, what your top skills are, all those things contribute to you obviously having a better understanding of yourself and then being able to, as a result, understand other people better. Um, Interactions will improve when you understand yourself first, even, your flaws. As a result, you can sort of work around them. It's another problem-solving situation to see how you fit in with others, how you can best utilize their skills versus your own. So yeah, I would say when you're thinking about leadership in the context of yourself, self-awareness is really that first building block into becoming a good leader. Secondly, really interesting point, which you may or may not have heard before. It's quite the buzz topic, but the growth mindset. So, what I mean by that is that a term coined by a psychologist called Carol Dweck, and it basically means that instead of fearing failure and kind of being your own personal worst enemy, you need to adopt this, I guess, openness to failure. It's that idea, having that belief in yourself that you can and you do constantly grow. You're sort of never looking to reach a steady state. You're constantly looking to learn and develop yourself. And I think it's a really important kind of thing to learn, maybe not just even in the concept of leadership, but overall, because certainly in the UK, I don't know quite where everyone was educated here, but we have an educational system that's built around getting things right. And it definitely doesn't encourage that kind of openness to failure to learn as I think it should. Ultimately we can't be successful if we don't fail along the way because failure brings about the biggest learnings. So this concept of the growth mindset really kind of leans into that. It's all about embracing things that go wrong because they're all learning opportunities. I've put resilience in there. I don't think this is necessarily maybe gonna be too big of a factor if you're just practicing leadership skills in, more informal context. You're not necessarily leading a massive corporation, so hopefully won't face too many challenges. But ultimately, leadership, leading others can bring about its challenges. And I guess, yeah, again, being aware of how those affect you and being able to take them on board without taking them too personally is also, an important factor of leadership. And finally, goal setting. This one is a really interesting one. So, I, as some of you might have known, recently did a coaching course, and before in my life, I don't think I'd ever realized the value of goals. I hadn't been using them very much myself, hadn't been creating personal goals for myself. I think probably because I was, again, scared that I wouldn't reach them. And only now that I've learned about coaching have I realized the value of these things. So setting goals for yourself in whatever parameter it is, obviously in this one it's specifically going to be about leadership skills, is so important because it gives you that target to work towards. It allows you to understand how far along in your journey you are. And again, something I've learned is that, even if your goal's here and you get to here, it's not about saying, okay, I've not reached my goal. You can still be proud that you are on your way to your goal. So it's really about just being able to measure the journey, understand the journey, and yeah, I guess in a sense, motivate yourself to achieve what you want. You may have heard of this method, but a really good way to set goals is through the SMART goal method. So this stands for goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So, all of that's to say you shouldn't be setting a goal that, oh, I really said that in a very Scottish word way there. Couldn't have say it in. Just came out, guys. I don't know where that part of me was buried. But yeah, it's about creating goals that aren't a million miles away that, will be insanely hard to reach and ultimately when you don't achieve them will be very demotivating. It's about, small action points that you can realistically get to within a certain time frame and are very clear so that you know exactly where you're heading for. I think in the context of volunteering, it could be that you want to work on one project, and finish that by X date. I mean, um, at the STA, we don't always put time caps on projects because we know that people come and go, lives get busy. But in this context, and as an example, it could be a really good thing to say that you want to, have completed a project by this time, list the leadership skills that you want to practice in that time, because again, it's realistic and you can measure that. Perfect. Next slide, please. So yeah, leading yourself's one thing, first and foremost, and obviously the clue is in the name, leading others is a pretty big element of developing your leadership skills. So what are the key components when it comes to how we lead others? So Charlotte's already mentioned this. I think Andrea, you might have popped it in as well, but communication. Communication is the top of my list. I think it's absolutely key and it's so important because it's undervalued. People don't realize how important communication is. And yet, if it's not consistent, if it's not good, then a lot of things can slip as a result. So, the things that you can do to practice good communication, first and foremost, are active listening. So, you may or may not have heard of this, Andrea, you mentioned it already, but active listening is essentially there's a so-called few different layers of listening. Can't remember what they all are, but basically it goes from like kind of not being very engaged with somebody, what they're saying to you, interrupting them, maybe concentrating on what you're going to respond with, and then up the chain, active listening is there at the top, and it's the form of listening where you essentially don't listen to respond. You listen to completely hear the other individual, to understand what they're saying to you. And of course, as a result, communicate effectively and to make that other person feel valued, you should be practicing active listening. I've put regular communication in there. It sort of goes without saying, you'd think, but essentially keeping team members updated on what's going on, making sure they don't feel, lost or unclear about what is going on in an organization or in a project is really important because otherwise people are disconnected, there's no unity, and it's hard to motivate yourself or a team when when there's that fractured misunderstanding. And another thing that you can do when it comes to regular communication is just check in with your team. Um, Check in with your colleagues and make them feel valued by showing them that you care, showing them that maybe it's not just in a professional capacity that you want to hear about them, that you actually value them as people. I've put acknowledgement. What I mean by that is if somebody gets in touch with you, you don't just air the message for 3 days. You respond even if you don't have the answer to their point or their question. You acknowledge you've received the message because, again, it kind of signals respect when it comes to the people you're working with, colleagues, friends, whatever. I know nowadays it's too easy to not respond to things. It's too easy to ghost people. And believe me, emails get lost in my inbox accidentally. But there's absolutely that sort of signaling that comes with communication with other people. And interestingly, I've put adapting your leadership style, your communication style, sorry. So that's all about, different people work in different ways. I feel like that could be a whole other presentation in and of itself. But there is, I think a good leader will ultimately recognize, again, maybe when you understand yourself first, how other people operate and the fact that, you might have to kind of adjust your style based on what works for them. Now, to quickly move through the other 2 points. So, a collaborative approach. Again, these sort of things go without saying, but sometimes, again, the word leadership can be sort of associated with driving all the decision making and being the one in charge, when actually everyone's contributions in a team matter. And, you need to show that in order for the people in your team, for the people you're working with to feel valued. Then there's this whole point around empowerment. So, I don't know about you, but I've certainly been in jobs where I know that my leaders or my managers haven't actually cared to understand who I am, where my skills lie, and therefore I've been doing work that I've just found insanely boring. And then by contrast, I've been in a few jobs where my managers have taken the time to understand me and to understand where my skills and strengths lie. And they've let me lead with that. They've played into that. They've given me tasks that maybe they wouldn't want to do, but fit my interests. And whilst it's not possible to do this 100% of the time, again, it sort of signals as a leader that you value the other people, that you're willing to problem solve your way through how you work together as a team, because it is insanely hard to put energy into something if it drains you. I think you've probably all heard of the fact that when it comes to what we do in our day-to-day lives, there can be things that take energy away from us, so the things we don't like to do, and then there are other things that give us energy. So there are things that we will do that we feel invigorated by, that we lose time doing. So that point here is really to try and play into that because it will ultimately, benefit everyone involved. Everyone's getting energy from what they do. Brilliant. So now we've looked at how we lead ourselves, how we lead others. I'm actually going to compare some different leadership styles as well. Thank you. So, interestingly enough, I've never researched this too much before this presentation, but there are different forms or different styles of leadership that you can practice, again, sort of depending on the situation and depending on what suits that best. So the first is called servant leadership. It sounds slightly odd, but it is that idea of just putting others' needs before yourself. Very famous guy called Simon Sinek, who again I'm sure most of you have heard about, preaches around this sort of leadership. He made, I think, a famous comment one time about how if there's a room full of food, as a leader, you should be making sure everyone eats before you do. Like it's just that idea that, yeah, in order for you to get the best out of people, you need to put them first. So interestingly, this probably does work better for long-term projects, and for people that I guess value personal development because you are putting your time and energy into to helping them do that. So for volunteering, it might be a little less realistic to practice in short-term projects, but not impossible, obviously. You can always put other people's needs first. Then we've got situational leadership. So again, this is almost like a kind of agile form of leadership, but it's essentially when you adapt your leadership style based on the task at hand. So a style, the different kind of styles of this involve directing, coaching, supporting, delegating. So you can imagine, based on the various tasks involved, based on the needs of your teammates, you will be able to kind of switch up your form of leadership based on the task at hand. So yeah, probably best when you've got individuals that work very differently, potentially, especially like individuals doing a range of different things. But I do imagine there's absolutely this kind of leadership probably comes into to every form of leading that you do. And then finally, kind of an informal type of leadership. It's called peer leadership. And this essentially just emphasizes that you're all on the same level. Kind of, the point I've emphasized from the beginning. The fact that we can all be leaders is really a point around, how we're no different to anyone else. And there is no, or I don't believe there should be any such thing as kind of leader here, everyone else here. It's about making sure you bring the best out of the team, and a good leader will do that by being on the same level. Brilliant. Okay, and now some practical tools to put these sorts of things into practice. So the first one is 1 minute recognition, and this is essentially just a quick fire way to show appreciation for people you're working with. So it's literally about somebody doing an action that is good, positive, you admire, whatever it is, you immediately just, either say it to their face or send them a message, just immediately recognizing the work they do. And again, it's quite interesting because I think feedback, positive appreciation is sometimes undervalued and sometimes not done enough. So this is a really good way to build morale and yeah, again, kind of motivate those around you like a leader will. Then there's a specific way you can frame feedback. So obviously as a leader, there will come times, situations where you're going to have to give constructive feedback. And, I think paired alongside the positive recognition, it's it's fine, it's way better. The only time criticism or constructive feedback doesn't work is when that isn't paired alongside, all the positive stuff, because then it's just going to seem like everything's too negative. But anyway, a framework for giving this feedback is to specifically acknowledge a situation that's happened. So factual, you did X, something like that, or I noticed this. Then the behavior that was associated with it. So I don't know, maybe it was like trying to think of an example. Um, oh yeah, this is a good one. So I noticed you were on your phone during the meeting. Um, maybe Okay, well, I guess that's the situation and the behavior. So in a meeting, you were on your phone, and then the impact could be this made me feel disrespected, or confused as to why you weren't listening to what I was saying. So essentially, it kind of neutralizes any feedback that you give because it will first of all can offer up the facts of the situation and then describe the impact rather than leading with I felt like this because of this. I think people get immediately jumpy, a bit defensive. So this is a way to sort of frame anything that you're going to say with facts first. And finally, conflict resolution steps. So again, when you're a leader, it depends on the situation, it depends on obviously the type of kind of leading you're doing, but a part of being leader, a part of being human is dealing with conflict, it's dealing with disagreements. And ultimately, the key to this isn't that it happened, it happens all the time. It's about how we respond to these situations. So it's important to address disagreements quickly before they escalate. And again, the kind of key steps to doing this well are firstly to practice the active listening that we mentioned, listening to understand different people's perspectives of the situation. Focusing on interests, not positions. So, by this, what's meant is, again, sort of not maybe Putting one person against another, like seeing two different sides of the story is completely black and white. It's about understanding what the interests and needs of those persons are, of those people are, and trying to understand like what's gone wrong there in those conflicting interests, perhaps. Generating multiple solutions. So there is no perfect solution to anything, and I think sometimes um, maybe what's missed when it comes to dealing with disagreements is offering up various solutions, is not maybe kind of deciding for the individuals involved what the best course of action is. So a good way to I guess make everyone feel involved as part of the process is to hand the power over to them, give multiple solutions for how they can also take the disagreement forwards. And yeah, as part of this, agree on clear next steps, agree on what's best to do for everyone involved. And yeah, I think clarity is key. And this again, this whole kind of process links back to that point around communication. All of this is to do with communication. It's all about either appreciating someone, being honest with them, or yeah, talking to people to figure out what a positive I guess outcome of a negative situation could be. Great. So, yeah, for everyone here, everyone listening on the playback, the point is, as I've hopefully demonstrated, your leadership journey can start now. You can set the parameters for what you want to do. You can think about which of these various kind of tools and techniques that I've shared you want to develop. Maybe first and foremost, it is that point around leading yourself. Maybe you want to understand yourself better so that you can understand how to better relate to people. Maybe you feel like you've got a good handle on that and you want to start practicing these micro sort of behaviors that a good leader does, giving people the positive recognition when they do something you really admire. You know, um, gosh, what else have we used? Giving this feedback, you know, in a certain way, because the more practice you get out of all these things, the more they will become second nature to you. Um, which is why I think, like I said, volunteering is a great opportunity to do this, but you could also do it in your workplace, in your role, even sometimes, yeah, in various other activities, whatever it is. See everything as an opportunity to practice these skills. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to again be specific about what they want to do, and get that in the get that written down somewhere so that you stick to it. And I thought I would end with this really nice quote. I thought it really well applies to volunteering, and hopefully to all of you in your various job roles. Winston Churchill, I don't know the full history of that man. I feel like he's got mixed reviews. However, he has a lot of quotes to say. He's obviously such a smart man. And this one is, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. It's so true. I don't think you can ever live a very fulfilling life if all that you do is take. Giving's a massive part of that, and good leaders will do just that. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that talk. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have any questions, if you've got any good stories as well about either good leaders or bad. I always think these are super interesting. It can make or break an experience, make or break a job. So if any of you have interesting, you know, stories to tell, please just pop yourself off mute, pop your comments in the channel and the chat. Um, and otherwise, thank you all for joining me.